Okay, I'm just going to outline where I'm going with my own research, and I know this is a little chaotic to some to look at because I'm producing some multiple scripts, but it's not actually that hard to figure out. First and foremost, I love the geometries that are starting to come out of this stuff. It's just like amazing and fun, and when I was interested in masks and offsets and path mapper to control data, I really think that C# and Python might be the answer. So a couple things here. We're going to talk a little bit about hopping off scripts directly from GitHub. So all of these scripts I've brought in, there's actually C scripts, but they do different things. They're very basic. They're not even dealing with geometries. They're dealing with the basics of any coding language. And I keep hopping up more and more and more. And what I'm ending up doing is going and finding my files on GitHub, which are open source. Anybody can do that. And I would encourage you to just come in, set some here, and have them running. Thinking of that, well, basically I have my GitHub and I have my hopped up C# scripts, which I'm starting to make available to everybody. It takes a lot of kind of configuring inputs and outputs to make it work because it's fairly new. I am excited about all the series of scripts that I have going through. And I'm working on this series now, I think in the G loop section through the H section into I return. I'm going to take that down in series here, and then I'll do even more as we go dealing with randoms and arrays and things like that. That's making sense to me. So as I develop that, I'm writing basic scripts, which if you know your Grasshopper and from good organization, this is just a fancy way with the gene pool to kind of make a surface. From a loft, and then I'm just using a quad sphere and orient and an isotope trim to make that a piece of interesting piece of more architectural geometry instead of a single unit. I hop it up a little more by actually I don't hop it up yet, but I'm preparing the hop scripts. I do a little extrude. Then in the end, I take it and I start putting in all of these nice little nested hops nodes that work with iterations and recursion. And I do it in this, do it over here a couple times in loops over into the quad sphere. And I do it again over here with iteration with a break less than. And that's really how you go from working in this and turning, say, a simpler script that was maybe, let's take this one off, with something that looked something like this, which actually is, pretty basic Grasshopper tutorial type stuff to get you orienting things and playing with geometries. That's before the extrusion, so some people carry it to something a little more that looks like something Weaverbird would create. Keep in mind these incredibly parametric models that are based on two curves, so you can think of them as a very strange canopy. Pretty much worth making and casting if you want to turn that into metal. It wouldn't actually be that bad at all. I'm actually kind of excited to look at it as an environment map. What that looks like. It just takes a second to get through all the curves. It is a big script processing, so I have a little trouble with it, but that's not bad. It's kind of a nice addictive little surface with holes and perforations through it and irregularities. There's a few little nips and cracks through it. That would be a nice sheet of metal to cast, be it a jewelry or a surface or a sculpture in itself. And then the last one I'm putting in is this one. Just give it a second to load up. And this is that last section where I'm really starting to hop it up using the C iteration loops. And a lot of people get into that, but you can keep your script extremely clean. I mean, from coming from the first set to the second set to the third set. So that said, I have a lot of C scripts that I wanted to bring in, but they're kind of almost too. This one's pretty basic. It's go from hello world all the way through to introduction to some classes and methods and arrays. I'm excited about that one and for some loops. I think I have the Warsaw Academy gave me some really nice ones. Once I find out where my W is, I guess that was it. I have my Rhino Geometry, which was a C series produced by Raya Isa, which is going to produce some really nice things from points all the way through to reps and classes. So that's the one that's based in C that should be very interesting. And then I have this kind of Wickerson Studio user object thing that I just learned in Python. Now, the reason I may move back into Python once I get these hopped up, they could be very nice. I'm not sure. I can't even remember why I warned them with red. But I was making this kind of Wickerson Studio user object. And Python has had such a better calling or like desire to learn that. So what I'm going to do is hop these up after I do the C ones. It's going to take me a couple of weeks. But I just recently was granted GitHub Copilot. So I don't have to worry about going to anything anymore. I mean, this is like nuts. Like, what if I just want a function? I don't even know what function is going to recommend that I do. Odd or even is the one that comes up. Let's do modulo number. Hit tab. This is going to be amazing for me to write my code. I can tab that through, see what's next. It can come up faster if you want, but I like this. It's just really nice to see. Okay, there's your choices that you can run through and decide what you want. Is even, is odd, all these ideas that maybe. So that's going to be an incredible tool when I go in here and say, okay, why would I go in to make points initially? Let me pull this one up. I double clicked on it to get the script up. Of course, it's running everything else in the background. So because I have a lot of this linked with the web. And there we go. WH Wickerson Studios. These are just kind of tips on what I was writing. It's not actually what I want to do. I just want to pull one in, have a look at it. So there's your little script. You get a seed and you get a number. If we start doing this, we can get it up and running. Number count, it's not very high, 2. And then I think I'll have to take this over to enable. There we go, it's up and running, and we'll see what the output is. And this script's been written. So, like, endless amounts of stuff that you can do, but now, instead of having to go to a site and find out how to write this in here, I'm going to be over at Github Copilot pulling stuff that whatever comes into my imagination. Like, I hope I get this or I end up buying the software if they're going to end up charging for it. But this is incredible. This means that I could take anything I've done. And of course, I still have to hop this up. And if you don't know what that's doing, you have to grab your points. You have to have this kind of hop system that's, I think, still a little clumsy, but it's new. So it's still exciting to me. Group it. You're going to have to say points out here. Rhino script out, colon, don't ask me why, point, and I'll start using possibly Python, like camel case if I want to do that, because I'm bouncing back and forth from C to Python, so it's a little tricky. And then over here I've got my integers and I've got my seeds, so I would have to get my numbers as they're developing more of these, get integer, little thing for people that want to start hopping their scripts up. They ought to know a little bit about this. You double click, this is going to be the seed, so I'll put that in. And under most, I just wanted to run once and then stop, so that's a little subtlety you have to do as well. This will be the n integer. You can just say integer if you want, the same thing. Give it a 1 count iteration. And now that little guy, if I take it and I put it just a single file, obviously not this one because I'm not going to be able to hop to it. This one's ready to say it's hopped up, and I can reference this structure, this group. If I put it somewhere, I could use another hops node in another file to say, once I've named that, I can go in here and I can take the path, and whether it's on my computer or not, I can hop to it and get it up and running whenever I want. So what a great way to get, I think I'm just going to take this and disable it because I don't want to have a problem with it later. But that's where I'm ending up going. So that's going to be pretty exciting. I'm still going to play around with what I'm doing with the C. I'm still going to play around with all of that. I'm going to get into the Rhino geometry, all the C nodes. I think I'll be done with C for a little while then, because I think Python's going to be a lot more interesting, and definitely GitHub Copilot is supporting that along with all these other languages that I don't know yet, but I know the logic behind. Pretty excited to see what happens. So I hope you'll find your way to Wickerson Studios GitHub. I must admit I must be on something, because I went from 100 followers to over 800 in the span of about 3 weeks. I'm starting to really start to input things more often. I think this is kind of our matrix of what we look like online as developers, so I'm trying to improve. And I only got started in late 2019, and then I started to make this part of my life to do this. So very excited about it. I hope you find it interesting, and I hope when it comes to Grasshopper and trying to jazz things up and make some scripts, keep in mind this is just a repeated, simple script that uses basic Rhino techniques in Grasshopper once you become a little savvy, and then you can start jazzing it with all these things. So I can't wait to do my start max while loops, but more importantly, this is the one that I will get to right here, where we're actually not just dealing with surfaces. We can deal with breps, creating breps from edges and merge. coplanar faces, and I really have Raiis's white paper to thank me for pushing me in that direction. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you disappear into these worlds, start creating some interesting geometries, and all the best.